From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.
At the Legislature today, parents on public assistance would be rewarded when their children get better grades in school, under a bill introduced in the Senate today. And we'll discuss the effort to reconnect McDowell. Organizations are in the midst of a 5-year initiative to improve the quality of life in this once flourishing county. A special report tonight on the Legislature Today. Good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. Today, the House of Delegates formally announced its position on Patriot Coal's plan to cut benefits to nearly 22,000 active and retired miners nationwide. Dave Mistich explains.
House Resolution 28, which has nearly 80 co-sponsors, asks Patriot Coal to keep their promise and fully provide those benefits. Delegate Mike Caputo of Marion County, who worked for Peabody Energy for 20 years and also represents United Mine Workers of America, stood on the floor and gave a speech about the miners and families affected by Patriot.
They made promises to active miners and their dependents who work in their operations today. And they made promises to over 22,000 retired miners and or their spouses and surviving spouses. The promise was real simple. You work hard in a very dangerous, hazardous condition that will eventually take a tremendous toll on your long-term health. You create a magnitude of wealth for the company, and in return for that, companies like this were supposed to take care of our health care from cradle to grave.
Patriot Coal filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in July of last year and recently announced its retiree health liability has ballooned to $1.6 billion. The company has proposed funding only $300 million of those benefits through a trust fund. The United Mine Workers Union has protested Patriot's plan. The union alleges Peabody and Arch set up Patriot to fail by spinning off or selling mines to shed pension and health care benefits. Caputo noted a protest on January 29th in St. Louis where he, UMWA President Cecil Roberts, and others were arrested.
I was handcuffed. I was led to the paddy wagon. And I was taking that walk. I looked at Peabody's corporate office. And I told the officer, "You got the wrong guy. You got the wrong guy." And he kind of looked at me and chuckled a little bit. I said, "The real criminals are in that building over there. The real criminals are the ones who is trying to take away from the sick and those who busted their humps their entire lives for the promise of lifetime health care. Those are the criminals."
House Resolution 28 passed 93-4. Republican delegates Andes, Gearhart, McCuskey, and Overington all voted no on the measure. The House also passed House Bill 2463. That bill would repeal a current section of code that allows for the sterilization of mentally incompetent individuals. House Judiciary Chair Tim Miley explained the bill on the floor.
This bill would repeal all of Article 16, Chapter 27, which currently allows guardians to obtain a court-ordered sterilization for a mentally disabled individual that's in their care. Many states adopted laws similar to this in the early 1900s, but obviously after World War II, they fell out of favor.
Miley also noted that all other states that had adopted such laws have repealed them. West Virginia would be the last to do so. The bill passed 97-0. House Bill 2463 heads to the Senate. For the Legislature Today, I'm Dave Mistich in the House of Delegates.
The Senate passed 10 bills on the floor today, ranging from changes to procedures protecting juvenile witnesses in domestic proceedings to the scheduling of performance reviews for state agencies. But today was also the last day to introduce bills, and judging from the final bills introduced on the floor today, the Senate is still interested in legislation relating to education and prison reform. Ashton Mara reports.
On the last day to introduce bills on the floor during this regular session of the 81st Legislature, the Senate saw the introduction of 36 new pieces of legislation referred on to committees. One of those, Senate Bill 661, would create a pilot program promoting educational achievement for children whose families are on public assistance. Sponsor of the bill, Senator Chris Walters of Putnam County, explains.
What it does is it incentivizes people to get involved in their children's lives that are receiving government assistance, and it rewards them based off of how well their children are doing in school. If a child gets a 3.0 average in school and their family is receiving government assistance, their government assistance would increase based on his grade point average.
Walters says there is obviously a fiscal impact on the state, giving as much as a 2% increase for children maintaining a 3.0 grade point average, incrementally increasing to up to 3% for a 4.0. But he says a study would be needed on the financial plausibility of the program. He says that study will also dictate the number of counties that will be able to participate and the length of the pilot program.
Anytime somebody looks at government assistance, usually over here in the Senate or in the House, they're looking at taking things away from people, trying to threaten to get them to do something with their children, to get their lives turned around. I wanted to look at it from a positive point of view. I wanted to encourage them to do something and get some reward in return. That's what we do in business. That's what we do every other sector. And that's something that we need to do and instill in these people that are receiving this assistance. If they get involved in their kids' lives and their kids do well in school, we should reward them.
Walters says if passed, he thinks the program will have an impact on student achievement. Another major piece of legislation already passed by the Senate, prison reform. But like education, that doesn't mean the upper chamber won't consider smaller, related bills over the next few weeks. Senator Ronald Miller of Greenbrier County introduced a bill to increase the salaries of Division of Corrections employees, something he says is greatly needed.
They have a really tough job. They're probably their job's dangerous, it's difficult, they're underpaid, and it's a try to move them up.
Starting corrections officers make between $21,000 and $25,000 a year, which Miller says is just slightly more than state legislators make for their part-time work at the Capitol. He says there is no fiscal note completed for the legislation yet, but admits he doesn't think the bill will go anywhere this year. Still, Miller says it's an issue legislators should start to consider in order to attract and retain correction officers in the state prisons. For the Legislature Today, I'm Ashton Mara in the Senate.
In a moment, we'll review the effort to reconnect McDowell County. First, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today. Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 626, creating a criminal offense for law enforcement or EMS personnel for creating a visual portrayal of certain victims. Senate Bill 628, requiring the Supreme Court to establish a program to appoint probation officers to address truancy. Senate Bill 648, to provide students financial aid for certain degrees in return for a state service commitment. And Senate Bill 656, establishing a special study committee to assess problems facing the gaming industry. Up for passage in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 158, to ensure that streets are safe, efficient, and convenient for travel by all users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders, in the policies, design, guidance, planning, development, construction, and maintenance of roads in the state. Senate Bill 187, Governor Tomlin's bill to require a jobs impact statement to be completed by the West Virginia Development Office for certain proposed legislation which may cause an impact on the West Virginia economy. Senate Bill 336, to establish protocols and protections for the removal and return to play following concussions in interscholastic sports. Senate Bill 445, allowing the state tax commissioner to divert and use lottery prizes to pay the unpaid tax liabilities of lottery prize winners. And Senate Bill 584, to authorize pre-trial release programs to evaluate and supervise persons on pre-trial release as part of a community corrections program. For many young dancers in West Virginia, attending a dance class is routine. There are many dancing schools to choose from in their communities. Not so in McDowell County, which just incorporated dance into 3 of its schools thanks to some grant money. This is only one example of what is taking place there. Joining us tonight is Bob Brown with the American Federation of Teachers. He's the project director of Reconnecting McDowell. Bob, welcome back. Glad you're here.
Great to be with you.
Last week we talked about children in poverty, and Senator John Unger likes to say you cannot even talk about student achievement in education reform unless you talk about what that child is facing outside of the school. What challenges do you find children in McDowell County face?
Well, we have a host of critical challenges, high fences to get over. Look, we had this raging debate last week, and frankly, by Friday, we signed a pretty good education reform bill. The governor signed it. I was right in the middle of the debate. We debated whether or not the hiring criteria of new teachers has an impact on academic achievement. We debated whether or not the length of a planning period and collaboration, teacher collaboration, has an impact on student achievement. Mm-hmm. That's a fair debate. Look, we had arguments, it was a fair debate. But let me tell you what we have to be starting to look at in order to improve academic achievement, particularly in rural West Virginia. And that is all of the outside of school issues that children come to school with today that you and I could not even dream of years ago. Food insecurity, abject poverty, no access to recreational opportunities close to their home, isolation. We have a host of issues that are very, very serious in McDowell County. Not just McDowell County, perhaps they're more acute there, but we have a host of outside of school environments, or issues rather, that we have to begin to deal with if we're really serious about improving academic achievement in West Virginia.
The American Federation of Teachers produced a video, it's 7.5 minutes, about the Reconnecting McDowell effort. I'd like to show that to our viewers.
Yes.
So let's take a look.
McDowell County is a very large county. We're spread out. It's very mountainous. The hollows, the roads are very tough to go. Anywhere you get to anywhere, about 20 minutes. We used to have like 5 high schools. We're down to 2. So it's real tough to bring all those kids to 2 locations.
I would describe it as no different than any other school in the United States. These kids want to learn and they're eager and willing to learn. It's just they have a lot more challenges maybe than other students in other parts of the country.
The mines have gone down. There's very few mines that are working now.
There's definitely a high amount of broken families due to absentee parents.
And you're trying to say education is important. If they don't get that support at home, you have mixed messages.
At one time, McDowell County had 100 and some thousand people here. We're down to 24,000 now in this county. Through the mining loss of jobs and nothing else there, people just had to leave.
When I first started teaching, you were bumping into people on payday weekend. It was hustling and bustling town. Now the opposite has happened. On downtown McDowell Street, it looks sort of like a ghost town.
We're actually visiting one of the schools. A little boy was sitting at a table. He wanted to give me a hug, so he jumped up out of his chair, came over and gave me a big hug, big grin, sat back down, and a little girl sitting next to him said, "Well, is that your daddy?" And he said, "No, my daddy's in jail." And people have to understand that little boy's coming to school with that every day.
Many students live with a single parent. Even many more live with a grandparent. So they come from the households where they don't have much of a stability. So school has to provide that stability.
A lot of times people try to put down where we're from, but there's really a lot of talented people down here. You just gotta come look and find them. And I just don't think a lot of kids have the opportunity to show what they can do.
affecting student achievement really starts and ends with the teacher in front of the classroom. It's critical. We have really struggled to recruit and to retain highly effective teachers.
We've had a large number of subs for many years, long-term subs, people rotating in and out of positions, going to one school, going to another school, and it hurts the kids.
The pay is pretty respectable. They're all on board until they ask where they can find a house or where they're going to live.
If you Google it, apartments to rent in McDowell County, that doesn't exist. There are no search results. I was living in a trailer on the top of a mountain, and it was very secluded, and I was living by myself, and I didn't feel comfortable there at all because there was no one else around, and I was afraid with winter coming the roads would get really dangerous because it was literally on a mountain.
We're going to be finishing up on our walls projects.
Mr. Gotch, he's a really nice guy. He come down here 3-4 years ago from Pennsylvania, and we couldn't understand a word he said because he had that accent, and but he's talking about how he went home, and they can understand him now because he talks like us.
Because the way people look down on us, that's the way we feel about ourselves now. Like, I want to change that, but it takes more than one person. You can't do it by yourself.
The teachers, the community, we've all got to work together to change this perception and make people want to come here.
Today is the launch of a new day and a new beginning for McDowell County. We're not only going to join forces to enhance the well-being of McDowell County children, but by virtue of this effort, empower them with the ability to build a bright future for themselves.
I am so proud and so humbled by the magnitude of support and response that we have seen. And what we believe is that we develop and implement a model which will not only serve McDowell County, but can be replicated across West Virginia and replicated across rural America.
The measure of America is not doing what comes easily. It's what we do when times are tough. It's what we do for those who need the most. Neither geography nor demography should determine destiny.
The coal industry has done well in McDowell County, and I think it behooves all of us to return something to where we've worked. And UMWA is on board with this, and we pledged to the people in McDowell County we're going to be there. I recall when a young person came to McDowell County about 51 years ago and said he wanted to be president of the United States of America. This young man from Coalwood High School held his hand up, and he said, "What do you think about putting a man on the moon?" And everyone laughed at this young man. We also should know that that young man became a rocket scientist named Homer Hickam. And I believe there's a lot of rocket scientists still in McDowell County, and it's up to every one of us to see that they get the opportunity that Homer Hickam had. Thank you.
I love the area. I love the fact that it's almost like it's just one big family. That's what I wanted to say about McDowell within the next 4 years. That the kids in McDowell are the best kids in West Virginia. And we have students that try the hardest out of anybody that they've ever seen.
We do have people in this county that are determined to make McDowell County shine. What we need now is to get the next generation with that passion to stay here and make it work.
I want to go to college, probably try to get I've been looking at biology, chemistry, or biochemistry. And I want to go to medical school and become a doctor of radiology.
There's a need for doctors, especially for the rural area. I worry about him having to go away, but I want him close enough that he can drive home for Christmas.
I would really like to come back. I really would. And I really think if we can just get people back here and help build it up, it'd be a really good place. I really would like to be back here, because that's where my family and everybody's from.
That really says it all, but the part that gets to me is my dad's in jail.
Yes.
That gets to me.
Yes.
Would McDowell County benefit from a program like Teach for America or some other kind of national teaching corps that could go in there and help teach?
Perhaps so, but the real issue of McDowell County is a lack of housing for teachers. As you noticed in the video, the young woman who said she had to find a place to live in a trailer alone and isolated on top of a mountain. She has now left McDowell County because she couldn't find adequate housing. The young man that Trey Lockhart was talking about, the young teacher, he has left McDowell County. We have an acute shortage of housing for incoming teachers in McDowell County.
So what are you going to do about that?
Well, our next big project is to start moving forward. We'd like to create what we are calling a teacher village. And that would be an apartment complex where we can provide adequate housing for young aspiring teachers to come to McDowell County, where they could have a collegial atmosphere, perhaps a computer lab, perhaps some common space, perhaps a coffee shop, someplace where they would feel like they were among their peers and they could feel at home and safe and secure in McDowell County.
You know, one of the problems with finding any place to build in McDowell County is finding, first of all, flat land, and finding land that isn't owned by an outside interest.
Nearly impossible.
That's a toughie.
Nearly impossible.
How are you going to overcome that?
Well, there are a few places where there's some flat property where they've taken the tops off of mountains to extract the coal. And then, of course, in downtown Welch and Yeager and Gary and Moore, some of the older towns, there are a lot of vacant buildings. We're going to have to take a look at perhaps rehabilitating some of those buildings.
What about your plan for community schools? You have said that the schools are some of the best buildings in McDowell County. So why not utilize them a whole lot more than we do now?
In fact, we are, Beth. You know, last year we passed a piece of legislation that allowed us to create a county-wide collaborative innovation zone in McDowell County. And we wanted to collaborate and get buy-in from the employees. Last week, 78% of the employees in McDowell County voted to support a concept called community schools. And that is where we would provide wraparound services to all of the students and families in the school. That would be health, dental, social services, recreational opportunities, after-school programs for both students and parents, family reading centers in the schools, so that the school becomes the center and the hub of the community.
Do you feel progress is being made?
I don't think there's any question. We've made some progress. We have a long way to go. The challenges are severe, but we are totally committed. I can tell you, I've been doing union work for the last 35 years of my life. I consider this to be one of the most important jobs of my career, to try to help turn the community and the families around in McDowell County, West Virginia.
One of the worries was the buy-in from the community towards this effort. Have they bought in?
Yes, we have hosted, and we continue to host, community meetings and community forums, and we're meeting with local church leaders. We have a meeting of ministers, I think, in 2 weeks. We've discovered 146 churches in McDowell County. They will play an important role, and we're making the reach.
Bob Brown, Reconnecting McDowell. We will continue to monitor the progress there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth. My pleasure.
And here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today. Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 3086, Governor Tomlin's measure to transfer control of the West Virginia Industrial Home for Youth to the Division of Corrections and renaming it the Salem Correctional Center. House Bill 3126, to encourage inmates to complete educational and treatment programs and to reward exceptionally meritorious service by awarding good time days. House Bill 3138, to raise the tobacco tax by $1 and dedicate half the proceeds to certain smoking cessation and substance abuse programs and the other half to the General Revenue Fund. And House Bill 3139, to allow qualified investigators employed by the Secretary of State's office to carry firearms and concealed weapons. Up for passage in the House tomorrow, House Bill 2237, to prevent deaths caused by accidental opiate overdose by requiring prescribers to offer a prescription of the medication naloxone to patients for whom opioids are prescribed, and require that information and education on naloxone's beneficial and proper use in case of an overdose be made available to patients, family members, and caregivers. House Bill 2583, to establish a statewide system for sexual assault forensic examination services. And House Bill 2590, Governor Tomlin's bill to promote the productive reuse of idled and underutilized commercial, industrial, and mining properties. This has been the Legislature Today. Tomorrow, our guest will be Stephen Smith, the Executive Director of the West Virginia Healthy Kids and Families Coalition, working to improve the health of children and families. The coalition provides a forum for diverse organizations to coordinate and collaborate on issues that improve the health and well-being of our children. We welcome your comments and questions. You can email us at feedback@wvpubcast.org and look for full episodes of the Legislature Today on our website. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.